In my previous life, when an earthquake struck, my son and my husband's former lover's son were trapped under a stone slab. Moving the slab would ensure one of them wouldn't survive intact. My husband, the captain of the search and rescue team, decisively chose to save his former lover's son, leaving my son trapped under the slab. My son screamed at the top of his lungs all night. Her son was saved, and the three of them celebrated joyfully, but my child's body couldn't even be pieced together. Before my son's body was cold, my husband brought his former lover's son home, claiming to be the child's godfather. I refused and threatened that either the boy would call me godmother, or they would pack up and leave. In complete despair, I lay on the railway tracks holding my son's portrait. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day my son was trapped under the slab. After Jonathan led the search and rescue team to prioritize Callista's son, I moved a large stone, stood on it, and cried out, complaining loudly, "Fellow villagers, come and see." The captain of the search and rescue team ignored the villagers and his own son to save a widow's son first. How can this be justified? I deliberately amplified my cries to attract everyone around. Now, even if Jonathan didn't want to save my son, he had no choice. Sure enough, Jonathan's face was grim. He whispered for me to leave. In my last life, I knelt and begged him for hours to save our son, even until my head bled, but he never came. Jonathan, the one trapped is your own son. You didn't save him, but saved a widow's son. What are you trying to do? Some villagers, unable to stand it, blamed him. Callista hid behind Jonathan, looking aggrieved, her body spotless in sharp contrast to my disheveled state. Before I could say more, she rushed forward and knelt before me with a thud. "Sister Jessica, I've lost my husband and only have the son left. I beg you, please save him." I sneered, pulling my arm from her grip, revealing faint pinch marks. "What about my son? Does he deserve to die?" We couldn't agree. The search and rescue team reported that the oxygen below was thinning, and a decision had to be made quickly. Jonathan's face was grim. With onlookers all around, even if he wanted to save Callista's son, he had to consider the gossip. My son's weak voice came from under the slab. "Mom, is Dad here? Is he here to save me?" Choking, I nodded. Seeing the blood under the slab, my heart felt crushed by a giant hand, aching unbearably. "John, hold on a little longer. Mom will rescue you soon." I grabbed Jonathan's collar in anger, every tearful word sharp. "What does Callista's son have to do with you? You won't save your own son, but want to save hers." At that, Jonathan's face panicked. He opened his mouth to speak, but Callista's son, Victor, began crying under the slab. "Wah, Dad, Mom, my legs hurt so much. Hurry and save me." Jonathan's distressed expression twisted. Ignoring his bloody hands, he grabbed the slab to look down. "Victor, Dad will rescue you soon." Seeing his actions, my heart ached. He cared so much for another son. Jonathan turned and saw the sneer on my face, lowering his head guiltily, unable to meet my eyes. "Victor has been fatherless since childhood and bullied for years. If he isn't saved, the slab might crush him. If he doesn't die, he'll be disabled." "So, you want our son to die?" My tone held no panic, but my hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms, drawing pain. "I'll be careful and won't let Xing die." In my previous life, he said the same. Callista's husband died early, and she raised her child alone. As a fellow villager, Jonathan often secretly helped them. He claimed it was because Callista's husband was his classmate, and he cared for her and her child out of duty. Initially, I pitied Callista, widowed early, and her fatherless child, so I not only didn't stop Jonathan but supported him. But over time, I noticed changes in him. Jonathan stopped coming home, and when he did, he ignored me and our son. In our few conversations, he only talked about Callista and her son. "Make a thick quilt for Callista's family. A thin one won't do in winter. You bought cold cream recently. Don't use it. Give it to Callista. Her face is dry. Is there meat at home? Cook some for Victor. He's growing and needs it." I couldn't get a word in, only smiling and agreeing dryly. Later, he found it boring and stopped talking to me altogether, coming home less and stopping his financial support. I had to wash clothes in town, earning barely enough for me and my son. It wasn't until the earthquake that I realized he'd changed long ago. I begged him to save our son, but he scolded me for being ungrateful. After saving John, what about Victor? How can you be so cruel? He's not your son, so you don't care. He promised to be careful and not let Xing die, even saying he'd support him if disabled. But in the end, John wasn't saved. The space under the slab was small. When Victor was rescued, he stepped on the unstable slab, and before John could be saved, it collapsed, crushing him instantly. His body was embedded in the mud, impossible to retrieve. Jonathan only covered Callista and Victor's eyes, fearing they'd have nightmares. Unable to bear the pain of losing my son, I lay on the railway tracks while Jonathan took Callista and Victor to the city. My thoughts returned, and I suppressed my rage. Looking at Jonathan before me, I vowed never to trust his words again. In the end, the old village chief stepped forward and personally decided to save my son. Callista wailed and fainted in Jonathan's arms, and he asked angrily with red eyes, "Just because of the drought a few years ago, John's mother saved more than a dozen people in our village." The old village chief struck the ground with his walking stick, and when he spoke, everyone agreed. During that drought, I was the one who found the villagers suffering from heat stroke in the back mountain and carried them back under the scorching sun, saving their lives. After the chief spoke, even though Jonathan disagreed, he had to accept it. During the search and rescue, he kept reminding the team to be extra careful, fearing they might hurt Victor under the stone slab. Fortunately, there was no danger, and John was successfully rescued. When he saw Jonathan, he instinctively reached out, expecting his father to carry him, but Jonathan didn't even glance at him, turning instead to check on Victor's condition. It was dire. The stone slab had tilted and crushed the child's leg. Jonathan's face paled, and he tied a safety rope to rescue Victor himself, ignoring the risk of the slab collapsing. In the end, though Victor was saved, his leg, crushed by the slab, was deemed useless. As soon as he was brought up, he cried and screamed, clutching his leg and throwing a tantrum on the ground. Callista, now awake, held Victor and sobbed heartbrokenly. Jonathan, a towering man over 1.8 meters, squatted on the ground and wept like a child. How could the slab have collapsed so suddenly? Did someone kick it? Callista's voice was hoarse as she looked at Jonathan in despair. I didn't want to witness their intimacy any longer, and was about to leave with John when Jonathan suddenly rushed forward and kicked him. "Little beast, did you kick the slab? Why else would it collapse?" His eyes were red, lips trembling as he pointed at John. The child, just rescued, was struck by his father. His eyes reddened and he cried, hiding behind me, sobbing as he explained, I didn't step on the slab. It wasn't me. I know my child's character, but this broke my heart even more. If Jonathan could suspect the slab tilted because it was stepped on, why, in his previous life, did he ignore his son's death and favor the murderer? You still dare to quibble? Is it because I haven't disciplined you in 2 years that you're asking for trouble? Seeing Jonathan about to strike John again, I quickly stepped between them. He's my son. Ask yourself, have you ever cared for him a single day since he was born? You call yourself a father, but are you worthy? Ignoring Jonathan's furious curses, I carried John to the makeshift clinic. The clinic, hastily built amid the ruins, was chaotic, with injured people lying everywhere. Some, freshly rescued, cried out in pain. Others could barely move. When John was saved, I noticed his arms were unnaturally twisted. Though he pretended to be fine, I saw the sweat beading on his forehead. This sensible child made my heart ache. Meanwhile, Jonathan hadn't even looked at him since the rescue and even beat him. I finally found a doctor and dragged her to check John's injuries. Seeing his bruised little arm, I couldn't bear to look and turned away, crying. "Mom," he called. I quickly wiped my tears, forced a smile, and looked at John. "Mom, don't cry. I'm not in pain. It's my fault. I caused you and Dad to fight. But I really didn't push the slab. When we were downstairs, my brother said he was thirsty, and I gave him my water. My eyes stung at his self-blame. I carefully hugged him. John did nothing wrong. Mom believes you didn't push the slab. I finally coaxed him to sleep, but his brows remained furrowed in pain. To avoid taking up medical resources, I carried him back slowly, navigating the devastation and avoiding cracks in the ground to prevent falling. When I reached our home's location, a disaster relief tent stood there. Seeing me return, Jonathan snorted coldly, lowering his head to feed medicine to Victor in his arms. "You're back just in time. Meals are being distributed outside. Hurry and get food. Victor's been downstairs so long, he's hungry." I touched my son's belly, feeling it empty, and went to get food without a word. When I returned, Callista snatched the meal from my hands and called Jonathan and Victor to eat. Seeing they had no intention of including us, I sat down with John in my arms. Jonathan frowned but said nothing. During the meal, he suddenly spoke. "By the way, I plan to adopt Victor as my godson." I paused, chopsticks in hand, and looked at him coldly. When I didn't respond, he slammed his chopsticks down, stood up, face flushed, and pointed at me. "If you hadn't saved Victor just now, would his leg have been amputated? You caused this, shouldn't you compensate him? I just want to adopt him as my godson, and you're unhappy. Jessica, how can you be so cruel? Either let him call you godmother, or pack up and leave." Hearing him echo the same words from his previous life, I sneered. "Mom is mine. I don't want to share her," John said, standing in front of me without hesitation, arms outstretched to protect me. Victor, so young, glared with resentment and grabbed chopsticks, stabbing at John's eyes. "You little bastard, it's your blessing to have a father like him. Why stop me?" I pulled John away just in time, averting tragedy. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Callista crouched down, gently comforting the furious Victor. Callista, tears in her eyes, cried, "Sister Jessica, I'm a widow. You don't need to worry, I'll steal your husband. But my son lost his leg because of you. Don't you feel guilty?" Facing her moral manipulation, I fought back decisively. "You can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. How could it be me who killed your son? It was Jonathan who saved him. Go and talk to him if you have anything to say." Callista's expression froze, her lips slightly parted, not knowing what to say. "Jessica, you are very nice. Since you don't agree to recognize Victor as your godson, then let's get divorced. As for your son, don't even think about calling me dad again. Now you two get out of here." Jonathan smashed the bowl in his hand, pointed at my nose, and cursed angrily. Looking at this familiar yet unfamiliar face, I resolutely got up and walked out with the child in my arms. Jonathan's cursing continued, and I could still vaguely hear Callista's hypocritical comfort. My son timidly pulled my hand and asked carefully, "Mom, I am willing to share Dad with him. Don't quarrel with Dad. Let's go back." I patted my son's head soothingly and asked him to call the village chief with a smile. I went to the search and rescue team not far away and found a big loudspeaker there. Jonathan drove his wife and children out of the house and took another woman home. Come and see. After the earthquake, the survivors regarded the people in the search and rescue team as saviors. At this moment, most people gathered near the search and rescue team. They heard my shouting and came over to watch the fun. I begged the elders and villagers to make the decision for me, and I begged the leaders to make the decision for me. Jonathan abandoned his wife and children and forced me to be the godmother of his lover's child. I didn't want to, so he drove us out. The earthquake is not over yet. He is trying to kill both of us. I knelt outside the search and rescue team's tent holding my son, crying loudly. No one doubted what I said. The injuries on my son's body were the best evidence. His wife wasn't dead yet, but he brought his lover home. How could the kid from the Jonathan family be so confused? I heard that the lover he found was the widow at the head of our village. I've seen her several times. The kid from the Jonathan family came out of her place. What a sin. They are having an affair. Catch them quickly. Don't bring disaster to other people's families. The noise outside was too loud, and someone from the search and rescue team came out soon. I saw who it was, and my eyes suddenly lit up. It was the captain of the base. I didn't expect that he would come too. Originally, I was worried that no one in the search and rescue team could make decisions for me. After all, Jonathan was the captain. Who would dare to make things difficult for him? Now it's good. A higher-ranking official can crush people to death. Finally, someone who can suppress him has come. I rushed over, grabbed the trouser legs of Political Commissar Wang, and cried breathlessly, "Comrade, if you have anything to say, let's get up and talk." "What are you doing?" He is kind-hearted. Ignoring the dirt on my body, he carefully helped me up. "Leader, you have to make the decision for me. My husband brought a woman back home and asked the child to recognize me as his godmother. I was not happy, so he asked my son and me to get out. By the way, my man's name is Jonathan." As soon as he finished speaking, Captain Wang ordered the soldiers behind him angrily to bring him to me. When he turned to face me, he solemnly promised, "Don't worry, comrade, the organization will give you justice." After that, he ordered his men to take me and my son to the search and rescue team's tent to rest. But I hadn't seen Jonathan being scolded yet, so I couldn't bear to leave. After a while, Jonathan came over in a hurry. His orange-red search and rescue suit was loose, and his belt was not fastened. He hurried over when he heard the leader's summons. When he saw him, Captain Wang didn't say a word and kicked him. "Captain, what are you doing? Let me know how to beat you." Jonathan rubbed his chest with a grin. But he didn't dare to challenge Captain Wang. He could only smile carefully. "You still have the nerve to ask me, where are your wife and children? I heard that you are very capable. You dare to find a widow, and even force your own wife and children away. Jonathan, do you know that this kind of behavior is adultery and destroys military marriage?" Captain Wang was so angry when he saw him that he was shaking all over. At this time, Jonathan finally saw me standing aside, watching him being beaten with cold eyes. "It turned out that you were the one who reported the case." His eyes were bloodshot, and he wanted to rush up and slap me twice. "Captain Wang, this is all a misunderstanding. Don't you know that Victor lost his legs because of her? He had a dream of becoming a soldier since he was a child. Didn't the broken leg kill his dream? I also gave her a chance to repent and make a new beginning, so I suggested that she recognize Victor as her godson." Jonathan glared at me fiercely, and when facing Captain Wang, he had a flattering attitude. "Nonsense. I was there when the rescue of the 2 children was launched. What does the child's missing legs have to do with your wife? But you didn't save your own son, but ran to save a widow's son. What were you thinking?" My eyes were sore when I heard his words. Everyone could see the facts, but Jonathan was the only one who thought it was my fault.
"What do you mean by you?"
"I'm telling you, you've been having an affair, delayed the rescue, abandoned your wife and children, and ruined your military marriage. Don't even think about escaping from any of these things. I'll appeal to the military court after the rescue is over. If you have time, you'd better go and ask for forgiveness from your wife and son." Captain Wang snorted coldly and walked away, leaving Jonathan with a pale face and trembling body. There were people watching the excitement all around him. After hearing Captain Wang's words, they despised him and Callista even more.
"Bah, so shameless.
You know he has a wife, but you still try to get close to him. If it was my wife, I would have broken her legs long ago. That man is not a good guy either. Who knows what relationship he has with the widow's son? He was asked to save someone else's instead of saving his own son. The eloquence of rural ants has always been one of the best." After a few rounds, Jonathan's face was as white as paper, and Callista was not much better. This world is always more demanding of women than men. Originally, she was not welcomed in the village because of her identity as a widow. Now no one respects her even more. Anyone who walks by her will spit at her. At this time, Jonathan suddenly remembered something and rushed to me. "Go and tell Captain Wang not to record the punishment against me." I was so angry that I laughed when I heard his self-entitled request.
"Why?"
"Which of these punishments wronged you?" Jonathan opened his lips slightly, wanting to speak, but not knowing what to say. He really could not refute it because he really made those mistakes. Suddenly, I felt a tremor under my feet. I immediately realized that the earthquake was coming again. I remembered that my son was still in the disaster relief tent, so I rushed in and took him out. But the aftershocks were fierce. In an instant, the tents that had been built with great difficulty collapsed. Terrible cracks appeared on the ground, and people were crying everywhere. My eyes were already full of tears. I panicked and looked for my son under the collapsed tent. "Jonathan, this is your son too. Come and find him quickly." He only reacted after hearing my hoarse shouts. He rushed over and started digging through the rubble with me. At that moment, a woman's cry suddenly came from not far away. It was Callista. "Jonathan! Jonathan! Where are you? Come here quickly. Victor's legs are trapped again." Jonathan's body suddenly froze. I could tell he was about to leave, so I grabbed his clothes tightly. "Jonathan and John are still down there, and John hasn't been rescued yet." My voice was completely hoarse. My fingers were already covered in blood, and my nails were bent backward. It was shocking to look at. At that moment, Jonathan was the last hope I was clinging to. What would happen to John if he left? "I beg you, I really beg you, please rescue John." I was about to kneel down, but he only gave me a complicated look, then ruthlessly pushed my hand away and ran toward Callista's direction. All the strength in my body drained away, and overwhelming despair swept over me. This time, I gave up completely. Fortunately, my son had been buried under the search and rescue team's tent, and many of them came to help. My son was lucky. The compressed area happened to form a triangular space, and when they found him, he only had a few scrapes. I held my son in my arms and broke down crying. At that moment, Jonathan hurried back. When he saw that our son was safe, he breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing the coldness in my eyes, he tried to explain helplessly, "Victor's leg was injured, so we'll get a divorce after the earthquake." I interrupted him, held my son, and left. No matter what excuses he had, a man who didn't save his own child wasn't worthy of being called a father. Once the search and rescue operations were finished, all the survivors were moved to a safe area where there was no longer any danger. Captain Wang then ordered the team to withdraw. Of course, Jonathan and Callista left with them. The divorce papers arrived the next day. As compensation, the organization sent me rice, flour, oil, and money, and even arranged for soldiers to build a house for me and my son. My son excitedly ran into the newly built house, his eyes sparkling as he looked up at the roof. "Mom, it won't rain in this house." I felt a pang of sadness and gently straightened his messy collar. Jonathan had been gone for too long. The roof of our old house had caved in, and no one had come to repair it. I could only use straw to plug the holes, but every time it rained, water would still drip through. Over time, I developed rheumatism, and my body ached every time it rained. As for Jonathan, the incident had too many implications, and since it involved suspected destruction of a military marriage, the higher-ups conducted a thorough investigation that lasted nearly 6 months. Half a year is enough to change many things. When the national policy relaxed, I left the countryside and moved to the city with my son. With the memories of my past life, although I had been devastated by my son's near-death, I had also witnessed the country's development in the years to come, so I knew how to follow the trend and seize opportunities. The pension provided by the organization became my startup capital. I followed merchant ships to the south. The southern economy was recovering, and it was the time of reform and opening up. I used the capital to buy clothes I had never seen in the north. The styles were new, and they sold out immediately. Seeing how well the clothes were selling, I sensed a business opportunity. I repeatedly followed the merchant ships south, transporting clothing, accessories, and food that were unavailable in the north to ride the wave of the times. I became one of the first to try something new and made a fortune. My son and I moved into a big house and bought the first car in town. Soon, others noticed the opportunity and followed suit. I knew it was time, so I stopped, sold off my last batch of goods, and bought a company. I named it John Group, after me and my son, specializing in producing daily necessities. The last wave of change toppled many entrepreneurs, but thanks to my foresight, I was the only one unaffected. With the support of national policies and my past life knowledge, my company flourished. In an era when vanishing cream and pig pancreas soap were popular, I developed a variety of soaps and shampoos, and they flew off the shelves. My company grew increasingly famous and was even invited for an exclusive interview on national television. I spoke eloquently on camera, with no trace of my rural past. Jonathan's trial was finally scheduled. Since the case involved me, I had to attend. Though I didn't want to see him again, I had no choice. I hadn't seen him in so long that I almost didn't recognize him. Perhaps life in detention was hard. He had aged considerably. His hair was nearly white, and though his clothes looked freshly changed, he was still in handcuffs. When he saw me, there was a flicker of shock in his eyes. I had cut off my long braids and kept my hair at shoulder length. No longer doing farm work or exposed to the sun, my skin was no longer dark and rough. It had become smooth and fair. But the biggest change was in my eyes. No longer dull, they now shone with confidence, so much so that he couldn't look at me directly. Seeing me glowing with strength and beauty, Jonathan subconsciously lowered his head and tugged at his wrinkled clothes. I ignored him, walked to my seat, and waited for the court to begin. The judge sat high above, reading out the list of Jonathan's offenses. The defendant, Jonathan, was a soldier who, during his marriage, had an improper relationship with the defendant Callista. After investigation, it was confirmed that Callista's son, Victor, was biologically related to Jonathan. Disrupting a military marriage is punishable by a fixed-term imprisonment of not more than 3 years. After hearing the verdict, Callista screamed in panic. I didn't do it. He forced me. He forced me to do it. She cried and tried her best to clear herself of the charges, but the whole village could testify to how ambiguous she and Jonathan were. What's more, they even had a child. No one would believe her no matter how she explained. Everyone in the audience looked at her with disgust and disdain. No one respected a woman who destroyed another person's family. When I first heard that Callista's child was Jonathan's, I was also stunned. The doubts of 2 lifetimes were finally solved at that moment. I finally understood why Jonathan didn't like John and was even indifferent to his death. It turned out that, besides John, he had another son. Jonathan's face turned pale, and he bent down with his back to me. He didn't expect Callista to put all the blame on him. Jonathan, the captain of the search and rescue team, neglected his duty. In the most dangerous moment, he turned a blind eye to the lives of his subordinates. I clenched my fists, thinking of my son being carried out of the rubble covered in blood, and I wanted to rush up to Jonathan and slap him. As a soldier, he abandoned his wife and children. He tarnished the reputation of a soldier. From today on, he would be expelled from the army and never admitted again. When the result was announced, Jonathan's legs went limp and he collapsed to the ground. He was blacklisted by the country, which meant no one would dare hire him. What else could he do? No wonder he reacted so strongly. Everything was settled. I also stood up and walked out. As soon as I reached the door, I was stopped by Captain Wang. He apologized to me guiltily. It was my fault for not doing my job. I didn't even realize the soldiers under my command had made such a big mistake. How about this? I'll introduce you to a few better ones. After that, he clapped his hands. 7 or 8 soldiers in uniform stood in a row and saluted me. I was dumbfounded. These men were all handsome in their own ways. Was he asking me to choose one? These are the best men in our military camp.
You can pick one, he said.
He didn't seem to be joking, but I quickly waved my hand to refuse. Before I could say anything, an angry male voice came from behind me. What are you doing, Jessica? You're a woman. How shameless of you to hang out with so many men. I'm still here, and you're already flirting with them. When I'm not around, are you planning to sleep with them? Seeing that he was becoming more outrageous, I couldn't bear it anymore. I stepped forward and slapped him hard across the face.
We're already divorced.
What I do has nothing to do with you. Jonathan, do you live by the sea? You're so nosy. Faced with my sarcasm, he knelt down like an idiot, hugged my legs, and cried, I don't want to get divorced. I know I was wrong. Wife, can you forgive me? I won't have anything to do with Callista anymore. Let's live a good life as a family of three, okay? I was a little dazed. I didn't receive this apology in my past life, not even at death. But now that I suddenly heard it, I felt it meant nothing. His words begging for forgiveness sounded like nonsense to me. When a man cheats, it's never just once. Although he was kneeling and begging for my forgiveness now, it wouldn't stop him from cheating again next time. I will not forgive you. I will never forget what you did to me and my son. After that, I coldly pulled my leg free, turned around, and left despite his grief-stricken pleas. Captain Wang arranged several blind dates for me afterward, but I politely declined them all. I am now living a happy life with my son. Why would I need another husband to add to my worries? My business kept growing, and I opened branches all over the country. I started with daily necessities, then expanded into cosmetics, and eventually touched every industry. After televisions became popular, my name often appeared on the big screen, and almost everyone knew who I was. After I made money, the first thing I did was rebuild my hometown, which had just experienced a devastating earthquake. Under my leadership, our poor village gradually became prosperous. The villagers even built a monument of honor at the entrance and framed my photo on it so future generations could remember my contributions. I never heard of Jonathan again. He might have gone to the countryside to farm. As I got older, I handed over all my assets to my son, took care of myself, and lived a life of traveling and sightseeing. Life is short, better to enjoy it while you can.